you very much. Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Carl Rogerson. I'm a head teacher at Billesley Primary School, but here I'm in my role as director of Billesley Research School. We also have my colleagues Joe Goodman, who's the regional lead for the EEF in the West Midlands, who's going to talk to you in a second, and Tracy Adams, who's the deputy head teacher at St Matthews School and also the assistant director of St Matthews Research School. So we have a short slot this afternoon just to share with you a little bit of information about what we do really and how you might access some of the work we might do. And hopefully following this session, you'll want to get in touch with us and talk to us a bit more to see how we can support you in your school improvement journeys. So Joe, I'm going to hand straight over to you if that's okay.
Brilliant, thank you, Carl. So hi everyone, as Carl has mentioned, I'm Joe Goodman, the Regional Delivery Lead for the West Midlands at the Education Endowment Foundation. And before Carl and Tracy go into detail about the work of the research schools within Birmingham, I just thought it would be useful to give a bit of context about who the EEF are and why we have this network of research schools across the country. So if you can just go to the next slide, Carl, I'll be asking you to click through if that's okay. The Education Endowment Foundation, we're dedicated to breaking the link between family income and educational achievement, and we aim to raise the attainment of 3 to 18-year-olds, particularly those facing disadvantage, and also develop their essential life skills. We're often known to be a grant funder and a research organisation, but we're more than that, and we're a charity with a real moral imperative. We aim to support teachers and senior leaders to raise attainment and close the disadvantage gap that we see permeate within our classrooms and our schools. And we root our response to this educational challenge within the best available research evidence. So we focus on where we think the biggest difference can be made, and that's in teaching and learning. And we support teachers and schools to use evidence to inform their decision making. And we believe that that evidence is strongest when used alongside professional judgment. On the next slide, I'm just going to talk about sort of why we exist. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that. And the information that's presented here on this slide will not be new information to you. But in terms of sort of what drives the work that we do at EEF, it's this consistent gap in children and young people's attainment that we know is linked to economic disadvantage. The attainment gap is largest for children and young people eligible for free school meals and also those assessed with special educational needs. We know that it begins in the early years and is already evident when children begin school aged 5. And we know that that gap grows wider at every stage of education. So it more than doubles to 9.5 months by the end of primary school, and then more than doubles again to 19.3 months by the end of secondary school. And then on the next slide, the last point that I want to make about why we operate is that this gap exists in all types of schools. So the attainment gap that we're discussing is not a problem restricted only to schools classified as underperforming. We know that it's found in all types of schools. On the next slide, Carl, if we just look at what the EEF does, and it can be broken down into 3 core strands of work. The first is around evidence synthesis. So that involves summarising the best available evidence about what works in teaching and learning to improve outcomes for pupils, but particularly those from a disadvantaged background. The most prominent work that we have done around evidence synthesis is our EEF Teaching and Learning Toolkit, which is a resource that you may be familiar with, and that's recently been updated. The second core strand is around evidence generation. So we generate new evidence through funding a number of trials. We currently have around 80 active trials where we're testing the impact of high potential projects to generate new evidence of what works in learning and teaching. And then the third strand, which is where my role sits and also the role of the research schools, is under evidence mobilisation. And this third strand of work focuses on supporting schools to really put that evidence into practice. We know that using evidence to make and sustain change isn't always as straightforward as it sounds. So our regional work and our research schools really support schools to apply the evidence in their own setting and combine it with their own professional judgment and expertise. On the next slide, as part of our work around evidence mobilisation, you may be familiar with our guidance reports. And our guidance reports cover a range of topics. They have clear and actionable recommendations for teachers and senior leaders, and they're really rooted in that best available evidence around that particular topic and subject. So on the next slide, if I just talk about why is evidence so important. So we think as evidence as offering best bets and real valuable starting points for better informed discussions about how schools can actually improve outcomes for all learners. In terms of evidence as well, it can help schools to learn from the experiences of others, to actually consider how similar challenges have been addressed in other schools. It helps us to understand the strength of evidence behind particular approaches to improving teaching and learning. It also helps looking at cost effectiveness of a range of approaches. And by that, it also allows schools to spend smarter and capture the maximum benefit of current investment. It can help schools focus their efforts on things which we know are likely to have the greatest impact. And again, that key principle for us is that evidence-informed teachers and leaders really combine the findings from research with their own professional expertise to make those decisions within the school. Before I hand over to Tracy and Carl, I just thought it'd be useful just to talk about our regional mobilisation approach. So if we just go to the next slide, Carl. So our shift towards regional mobilisation really aims to make a real difference in schools, and it enforces a greater focus on disadvantage. And we do this mainly through our research schools network, and this currently includes 27 research schools and 10 associate research schools across the country. And what they aim to do is encourage schools to use evidence-based programmes and practices through regular communications and events. And they also provide really high quality training and professional development for senior leaders and teachers that are grounded in that best available evidence. Some key areas of work of the research schools, and I know Carl and Tracy will touch upon this, but there's that focus on evidence mobilisation. So really scaling up and promoting the use of evidence in schools, but particularly those with low attainment and high levels of disadvantaged pupils. And they also create and share a real wide variety of resources through social media, websites and newsletters, in addition to providing that high quality training. So a real focus is disseminating that evidence, that knowledge more widely, and developing the skills necessary for schools to really understand and apply that evidence in practice. They also focus on evidence exemplification, so working with schools to translate evidence into practice. And this includes amplifying a diverse range of voices to demonstrate the various ways that schools can engage with and use evidence within their context, and also supporting school-to-school learning by sharing a variety of different perspectives and evidence-informed trial and error approaches. So through the work that the research schools do, we aim to support the normalisation of effective and systematic use of evidence, and really promote that evidence-informed decision-making and implementation in schools. And we believe that through sustainable and really structured relationships with schools, we can support them to engage with the best available evidence on high quality learning and teaching, and really enable those students, particularly those facing disadvantage, to flourish. So hopefully that gives a bit of context about who we are at the Education Endowment Foundation and why we have such an emphasis on our regional mobilisation of evidence. And I'm really pleased to hand over to both Tracy and Carl now, who will be able to talk more about the work of the Research School Network, but particularly in Birmingham. Oh, Tracy, I think you're on mute.
Typical. I'll say that one again. So my name's Tracy Adams, and I'm the Deputy Head and Assistant Director at St Matthews Research School, and I'll be talking about one of our modular training, which is making the difference to disadvantaged pupils, but also about some of the other work that we do at St Matthews. Thank you, Carl. I'll be using that as well, just to move you on. So with our work, in terms of what Joel was saying, in terms of mobilisation, our focus when we support schools is about really supporting them to really focus on this sweet spot in the middle, where it's about evidence-informed school improvement. And what we believe is that you bring, as a school, your practical wisdom and experience and the context about your school community. And what we support you with is then, alongside that, bringing the data, focusing you in on your particular data, research and evidence, to really unpack your context in an informative way, so that you can begin to unpick what some of your priorities are, what some of your successes are, and then look at how you can work to really make an improvement for all pupils within your school. Thank you, Carl. So one of our programs is Making the Difference for Disadvantaged Pupil, and it has 4 key aims, which is, it's around developing a common understanding around the language of pupil premium strategy and how you can meet the needs of all your learners through that strategy. It's also about supporting schools to identify their key priorities, and the big focuses are teaching and learning, how you can use targeted support, but also whole school strategies to tackle disadvantage. 3, it's about really getting you to understand the principles behind implementation and to really focus on that: explore, prepare, deliver, and then moving into sustain. But it's really about unpacking, where is your school at now? How ready are you for change? And what things do you need to keep? What things you might need to let go in order to make a strategy or a program that you adopt really work? And then one of the things that we're really good at St Matthews and has been really successful with the programs that we've carried out is the wraparound support that we offer. So through the journey of this modular training, we do supportive coaching and mentoring sessions to support you to be able to adapt any program that you want to focus on, and then sustain that approach to really make a difference and close that attainment gap for children who are at most risk of underachieving. Thank you. So what would the 9 modular training look like? We go through some key things, and the 3 key things that we really go through is we have some clear activities that we focus on picking the pupil premium strategy, the EEF toolkit, the guidance document and template linked to the pupil premium strategy. And then we move you forward into implementation with some focused outcomes. And the biggest focused outcome is to make sure that you actually have a strategy that you can then adopt and move forward within your school. And then we focus on how we can support you to then sustain the impact of any program that you put in place linked to your data. Thank you, Carl. So this is modules 1 to 3. Modules 4 to 5 then really unpick the pupil premium strategy, but then begin to look at preparing you to move something forward. What are your problems that you've identified? And then what are some of the actions that you're going to take? But we really support you with the implementation planning by unpicking some of the active ingredients and some of the key things that you need to have fidelity to really support an effective implementation plan. Thank you. And then module 7 to 9 is where you actually write that plan. You're supported to focus on an approach and really embed that approach within your school, but supported with that with some wraparound support and coaching and mentoring. Thank you. So what else do we offer at St Matthews? Starting on the 29th of November, we have an Improving Literacy programme. Really exciting course that goes into reading, writing and oracy, but unpicks all of those elements, really digging deep into the research and focusing with implementation as a foundation. Thank you. We're also going to be working with Christine Council and schools across the West Midlands. Christine Council works for Ofsted, is an advisor for Ofsted, and her specialism is Humanities. She also works along the History Association, really giving a real focus into these, the work of humanities for every child. And this exciting project is linked to training, resources and support around developing a rich humanities curriculum. Thank you. And finally, something that we're really passionate about at St Matthews is reading for pleasure. And this year we've made a greater focus on our early careers teachers. So if you have any teachers that are doing their PGCE or ITT, we really encourage them to join this course if they really want to deepen their knowledge and understanding around the power of reading for pleasure in terms of supporting children's learning and their well-being. So really exciting. Starts on the 12th of October. I'd really, really recommend this one to all early career teachers. So finally, here this slide just goes through our team. And we really want to just emphasize that we can support across all curriculum areas, all phases from primary to secondary and special schools as well. We have a number of evidence leads in education who are placed in different areas across the West Midlands and can really support with lots of areas of the curriculum. So we're really open to supporting in whatever way we can. So we're excited about having the opportunity to kind of share with you about what St Matthews is doing, and we look forward to working with you in the future or just getting in contact with us so we can see how we can help. Over to you, Carl.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I think you've said it all there, Tracy. I think I can just finish it now. So you will notice when I'm talking through that, I'll be using similar language to the language Tracy's using, and we both run similar projects with different organisations. So the disadvantaged programme we've run with a group of secondary schools, and I know Tracy's running that programme very successfully in Handsworth at the moment as well. So I'm just going to take a slightly different approach, talk to you a little bit about implementation, and then talk about a couple of programmes that we're going to run as well. And as you can see just on that slide there, we'll talk about our approach, and I'm going to talk about one of our programmes to support SEND pupils. This is it's exactly what Tracy said. It's just a different model in terms of our approach, and I think this is key for me, as Tracy said, as well as that we're not. I think sometimes there can be an apprehension about that. If we look at the research, I know somebody said the other day that they're a bit worried that if you look at the research, they have to change everything that they do, and it's not about that. It's just looking at what the evidence says, and as Tracy pointed out, then working with schools in their context, and then coming up with this new knowledge to best support the approach for their pupils. I've just put this quote in from Doug Lemoff here because this, I think, underpins what Joe was saying in terms of our approach in developing partnerships with schools, MATs and local authorities, because we know that often, however good a course can be, it's the implementation back in school which is the most important driver of change within that schools. So we very, very much support schools to develop that culture of teacher development. And again, Tracy alluded to that when she was talking about that wraparound support that we offer, whether that's through ourselves directly or those skilled evidence leaders in education. Our training, I just took this as a simple diagram from the standards for teacher professional development, and you can see there we're particularly looking at, we're aware that there is sometimes a need for training for staff which is sort of kind of indirect, you know, it might be administrative might be about appraisal monitoring, but actually what we're talking about is professional development that directly seeks to improve those pupil outcomes, to improve practice and ultimately impact on those pupils. Yes, with that particular drive on the most disadvantaged, but we know that if we're delivering high quality teaching, that will support all of our pupils, whatever their background and their ability. This next one is that we are realistic. This is why I put this diagram here and the quote from Hargreaves and Fink there, that you may have been on the end of it sometimes when someone pops into your school and tells you what you should do and then walks off and leaves you to get on with it. We know that that's the kind of easy bit in a way. It's the implementation, which is the challenge. And even more difficult is actually sustaining that improvement there. And again, this is something that we're very aware of as research schools. And importantly is why we like to build into as many programs as possible that wraparound support. And I know, as Tracy said, she's had lots of success with that, particularly on the Making a Difference for Disadvantaged program. And the same for us as well, where our ELEs have done a great job supporting schools. So I'm just going to talk briefly through implementation. Tracy's mentioned it there, and this underpins any of our training programs that we work through. And what often schools will say is, actually the training program helped them to slow down really, and to think a little bit deeper, and to take more time to make the decisions about what it was that needed to change and what it was that was really going to make a difference. Number 1 and 2 there talk very much about a culture of leadership and capacity for change. And again, that's something we can support schools with. But then you'll see these 4 stages, numbers 3 to 6 there, very clearly talking through that explore and prepare stage before we move to deliver. And I think sometimes where schools can be less effective is where they jump to that deliver stage and they haven't really thought through what's going to make the most difference, and also what are the particular challenges that could come up here in this program, and how we can plan to address those challenges. I've just got this as another diagram here because I think this just helps explain it, that because we know implementation happens in stages and it unfolds over a period of time. It's not just a single event that takes place. So particularly these first stages of explore and prepare, that's where we slow colleagues down. We particularly examine that evidence base systematically and guide colleagues through that, and then support them in developing their implementation plan, which you can see in this sort of prepare stage here, checking that we've identified the right levers for change, checking that we've identified those possible challenges, and that staff are clear in terms of what approach we're taking as a school. So as I say, that underpins all of those programs. So very, very briefly, just as Tracy did there, I'm going to briefly talk you through one of our programs. This is one we've just started to deliver in the Hall Green Consortium, and this is our Making a Difference to Send Pupils program. We pull on a variety of guidance reports, which Joe mentioned at the start there. The Sending Mainstream Schools Guidance Report, Making the Best Use of Teaching Assistants, and we touch on some of the work in the Metacognition report and working with parents too. And similar to Sonia, I thought I'd just show you a slightly different example. I think, sorry, I mean Tracy, that's because I do apologise, Tracy. So here's the programme, and you'll see it's a similar approach to the one Tracy said with us, but we've just tweaked it slightly. So actually the first 3 modules, we had the excitement of a face-to-face training, which was wonderful actually. I think people were just excited to be in a room together. But so you can see very similar, it has key learning within those modules. And then we've got a kind of blended approach here. So module 4 is actually an online module, which is a 2-hour session, which colleagues access in the way that you're accessing this afternoon's session, another face-to-face session, and then those final modules which mirror the work of, that Tracy mentioned there, are those modules on implementation. I'm just going to see, this should hopefully take you to another screen, but let's see. Tracy, has it gone to a different screen? I'm just checking on that. Yes, it has. Thanks very much. This is just briefly how we organise some of the resources for colleagues. So we use things like Padlet, and we've had feedback that colleagues found this really useful because we can share, this was just from the other day, so we can share some of the work we've done in the day. We can share the resources and presentations, the research, whatever it might be as well. And colleagues' feedback is that they find that very useful for us and accessible too. So we build that into all of our programs. Tracy, am I back on my main screen? Sorry, I'm relying on you for this. Thank you very much. So that's, as I say, an example of that modular overview there. And just to finish off, really similar to Tracy, we do have some opportunities currently at the moment. I've kind of linked our brochure here, which just shares some of those examples. The main one I wanted to bring, I think that's being slow to load, I apologise for that, is that we have an early years course up and coming, which starts, excuse me while this is slow, I do apologise. which starts in November. But you will have access to this brochure, and all you have to do is just click on there, and if you're interested in booking on it, that will take you to a booking form and take you to that course. Let me just see if I can pop it up while I'm getting through. There you go. So there's the course. It's got a brief outline of it. You can see the dates at the bottom there. It's a combination of face-to-face online, and if you click on there, then that will take you to booking form. There's other courses on there which you can look at, and similar to I would finish with what Tracy said there, really, that there are various programs that we can support you with. Our contact details are there, and Tracy and I, we're not precious. If you contact Tracy, that's great. If you choose to contact me, or if you choose to contact Joe from a regional, that's great. And if we can help, we'll say great. If you contact me, I might say, actually, Tracy's best place to help you with that one, and I can put you in touch with her. We're just really keen to work with schools and support the schools on their improvement journey. Now, that's everything from me. Joe and Tracy, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or have we covered everything?
I think we've covered everything.
Okay, Joe, you okay?
Yeah, that was brilliant, both. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're excited. Hopefully you'll get in touch with all of us or either of us, and we'll start that conversation. But as I said, on behalf of all of us, we're excited to work with you and support you. Thank you very much.